And on the wrap tonight, the terror threat level in the United States raised for the first time in 4 years. We'll tell you why and what it means. The Justice Department now getting ready to investigate the constitutionality of police practices in Baltimore. What will they find? And across the pond, now that David Cameron will keep his post as UK Prime Minister, what's next for political advisor Jim Messina? And will Hillary win next year's Iowa caucus? We've got the numbers, plus potluck, yay or nay. This is the Daily Wrap, live from the Big Apple. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by America's pundit and the inspiration for The Good Wife. Is that true?
I love that show. I hope so.
Wow. Not exactly a good wife from what I've seen. And to her right, he's a former Navy SEAL, FBI specialist, and president of Continued Services. Jonathan Gilliam joins us. And finally, she is a small business guru and a best-selling author, Susan Solovic. Welcome back to the show. Appreciate it. We got a busy night tonight. Lots happening. Let's get right to the Daily Download. And there's new fallout from Sunday's attempted terror attack on a Prophet Muhammad art contest in Texas. The head of the Northern Command has raised the alert level at all U.S. military installations from A to B. Now, remember, there are 4 levels, with D being the highest, so we're now a Bravo. A U.S. official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, tells Reuters that the government had some specific information that the Texas gunman might inspire others to carry out an attack. CNN now reporting concerns that were raised when a known jihadist connected to one of the Texas gunmen tweeted out the name and address of a top U.S. military official in charge of training in Syria. This is the first time the threat level has been raised since the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. The increased security alert comes as the FBI director warns that there could be thousands of people inside the U.S. who are closely following ISIS online. James Comey says, and we quote, "The siren song sits in the pockets on the mobile phones of the people who are followers on Twitter. It's almost as if there's a devil sitting on the shoulder saying kill, 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 kill all day long." Comey and Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson discussed the growing threat with the nation's police departments today through a secure video conference. Congress is also looking into the online terror recruitment efforts by ISIS. Experts telling the Senate Homeland Security Committee that the U.S. needs to step up its social media game.
Given that media and the battle of perception is so central to what the Islamic State is trying to do, the U.S. government has to be more quick to react and to understand the strength of its messaging and to be able to respond at the same kind of speed, focusing in on the key message of the Islamic State at the same speed at which they can push out their own message.
Now, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker sits on that committee. He's one of the most active politicians when it comes to social media, and he says it shouldn't be too hard for the U.S. to compete with ISIS.
There are easy tactics. I know them, as you said, from politics, how to get more voice and virality to messaging that we're not using as a government to get counter messages.
And while U.S. officials look at security in cyberspace at home, the military is now training Syrians to take on ISIS on its home turf.
These trainees are recruited, they're vetted, and only then are they put into training. So they've been in the program for quite a while. And then the training takes some time, and then they would be inserted into operations.
The U.S. plans to train and arm a force that's expected to eventually top more than 15,000 troops. Some critics in Congress say the president's ISIS strategy is too limited to make a difference. Others say it's too broad. A small group of lawmakers is pushing to vote authorizing the military's use of force against ISIS. How significant is it that every U.S. military base has raised its threat level? Jonathan Gilliam, I have to go to you first.
Well, I just want to point something out, and I don't want people to take away from this that I'm some kind of jerk who walks around judging people, but when you look at the 3 people that you just showed talking national security and what we should be doing to defend ourselves, I mean, look, you need this. You need an operator. You need somebody who, when you look at them, you know that they're in the fight. Somebody who speaks the language of an operator. That's the problem. We have politicians running a war that they don't know how to come up with a correct war plan. I mean, you can train 15 or 20,000 people to go over and fight in Syria. It's not going to do anything to stop the fundamental Islamic movement. That's what we're at war with. And I do have an issue with the Defense Department raising this level and telling everybody about it. Why do they need to tell everybody about this? Because now, if I'm a bad guy, I'm going to say, well, I was going to attack the base, but now they've heightened their security, so I'm just going to go shoot up the Arby's that's right outside the gate.
Well, do they want to raise the level because of vigilance by citizens that could possibly tip off local authorities on a local threat?
Well, I'm not saying they
just
shouldn't
guessing.
raise it.
I don't know.
I'm not saying they shouldn't raise it and raise the awareness. That's force protection. But why does the DOD feel the need to announce everything that they do? They dropped 3 bombs over in Syria. They announced that they dropped 3 bombs. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
So you see a political aspect to this, like, see, we're doing something, not so much to help secure our
I
U.S.
think
military
we were
bases.
talking about this yesterday. When politics are involved, a lot of the times it just doesn't make sense to you and I. When we look at this, it doesn't make any sense.
But aren't politicians mouthpieces for the military? In other words, they're going on what military advisors are telling them, and then they're relaying it on during these hearings.
Well,
I'm asking you that.
During the Clinton era, I mean, it's all politics have always been at the top brass of the military, but the reality is now, for a long time during the Clinton era, warfighters got out of the military. When Bush came in office, the majority of those people that were politicians got lifted to the top, and now we have an excess of politicians at the top of the military, and they just absolutely do not know how. It's strange to hear this, but they don't know how to come up with a strategic war plan.
Heather.
Well, you talked about the politics of it all. We see that with the authorized use of military force. We have right now what the president is doing with ISIS is based on the 2001 authorization that Bush received after 9/11. And the idea that neither Democrats nor Republicans really want to push for a new authorization because they can't agree on anything, and it's all about politics. It's all about whether or not the people who are voting for them are going to agree with what they say. So then rather than give him a new authorization, they're just going to continue along status quo, fighting a different enemy that should be fought in different ways with something that applied back in 2001, which is so long ago, and things have changed so much, and yet it won't change simply because of politics.
Susan?
I think politics is a part of it, but I also think there's something else going on here, and they're so technologically savvy. They're just dancing around us, laughing at us because we aren't looking at how sophisticated they are, how amazing they are at getting their messages out there, recruiting these young people. And if you look at the psychology of the people they're recruiting, they're looking for people who want a certain standard, a lifestyle, black and white, something bigger than they, to be bigger, a vision. A lot of these people may have lost hope in their existing lives. They're looking for something to give them value. And that's a very scary place to be. One expert predicts that we're going to see at least 10 incidents in the next few years right here on our own soil. And I think probably that's just the tip of the iceberg.
It's the speed of recruitment that really should be disconcerting for everybody. Because what we used to have was a courier would be handed a videotape, like with Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal reporter. And when he was executed, they actually, not even the tape, they delivered a camera to a hotel lobby in Pakistan and handed it to a U.S. ambassador who was over there. And says, the courier handed it off, signed for this, great, and that's how they learned of it.
Yeah.
That's such a process. It took days for that to happen, and sometimes if Al Qaeda wanted to get their message out, it would take weeks, courier to courier, eventually to maybe Al Jazeera, and maybe they'll play a snippet of a tape of a message of Bin Laden. Now they can send out hundreds, thousands of messages a day for free, anonymously to anybody in the world, and that's how they recruit. I don't know how. I know you try, but that's going to be very difficult to stop.
But you know what, Joe, so can we. And that's the problem. When you saw Cory Booker, if you watched more of that Homeland Security meeting, Senator Ron Johnson spoke as well, and he said, we invented the internet, whether you believe that that's true or not. We invented social media.
We all know who invented the internet.
Al Gore, of course.
Steve Jobs.
But tweeting and doing social media stuff is not going to win this war. We have to have an overall strategic war plan. We just simply do not have.
What would
But
you
we
do,
do-
John? Ethan?
I would.
Sorry, I know not to call you John, so I caught myself.
First off, I would stop concentrating so much on the Sunni and Shia break. I would just start concentrating on the overall Islamic movement. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but we have to have a plan to push that back.
Sure. So a combination, but mostly military would be your
absolutely.
option. Yep. In the end, that will be the only difference. So coming up next, the Justice Department is going to investigate Baltimore's police practices. Were they acting unconstitutionally in the death of Freddie Gray? Stay right there. We'll be right back here on the Daily Wrap.
Today, the Department of Justice is opening an investigation into whether the Baltimore Police Department has engaged in a pattern or practice of violations of the Constitution or federal law.
And welcome back to the show. That was new Attorney General Loretta Lynch today announcing a Justice Department civil rights probe after the police custody death of Freddie Gray. Mr. Gray died from a severe spinal injury after his arrest last month. 6 police officers have been charged. 1 officer faces a count of second-degree murder.
This investigation will begin immediately and will focus on allegations that Baltimore Police Department officers use excessive force, including deadly force, conduct unlawful searches, seizures, and arrests, and engage in discriminatory policing.
Now, Baltimore police will be given the same federal review as the departments in Ferguson, Missouri, and Cleveland. The death of the 25-year-old Gray has sparked numerous peaceful protests in Baltimore. Then that turned into, obviously, a day of rioting that we saw last week. Dozens of businesses burned and looted, and more than 200 people arrested.
I would have to say that my first reaction was profound sadness. It truly was. It was profound sadness for the loss of life, for the erosion of trust, for the sadness and despair that the community was feeling, for the frustration that I know the police officers were feeling also as they tried to encourage peaceful protests, but then had to deal with violence.
An attorney for the family of Freddie Gray says it welcomes the Justice Department investigation.
We are gratified that national attention has been focused on the problems of the Baltimore City Police Department, because that gives us reason to believe that these problems can be solved. But first they have to be identified honestly and truthfully, fairly and impartially.
The Attorney General is launching the probe at the request of Baltimore's mayor. The Baltimore Fraternal Order of Police says it welcomes the DOJ investigation, but says it should also include the mayor's office. So, what do you think the investigation will turn out ultimately, Heather?
Well, clearly there's plenty to investigate, and I do have to say that Loretta Lynch has handled it really well as far as coming forward and really supporting the police, as opposed to Eric Holder, who didn't give that same type of support. It's going to be very interesting because there's civil rights violations alleged, and yet you've got a commissioner who's African American, you've got a mayor who's African American, 3 of the 6 police officers who were arrested as African American. But the bigger problem that I see in Baltimore is, do you know that in the past 24 hours there have been 9 shootings and 2 homicides? Nothing to do with the riots, nothing to do with this. It's purely another day in Baltimore. And so you've got police men and women who are dealing with this type of crime on a daily basis, where you're seeing 9 shootings, 2 homicides, and it's how to deal with that type of threat to your body, that type of threat to the community, that type of behavior that's going on, and how to deal with it in a way that isn't violating people's constitutional rights. And I think that it's going to take a lot of education.
And that's considered a light night, by the way, in Chicago,
right,
for instance, where there are plenty more shootings and plenty more deaths. Yeah. So it's a problem that rarely we hear about, or that New York City police officer that was shot in the face.
Well, right.
Right. There are no protests over that in any capacity.
And what they deal with. And that's the thing. You know, you think about, well, they deal with the riots, that's just a one-off. This is every day. And they go into these communities that are very dangerous. And there's a level of adrenaline, I'm sure, and you can talk about that a little bit better. There's got to be a level of fear. There's a level of anger. And all of those things there's got to be a way to temper those so that there's a better relationship with the community, so that we don't have to waste these resources with the DOJ going all around the country doing all of these investigations.
Susan.
Oh, I would say to that point, Heather, is actually that it's a much broader issue than just in the Baltimore Police Department or Ferguson or Cleveland or wherever it might be. There is a real breakdown of trust. And that starts, according to some of the people I've talked to, right with the Obama administration, because there was a great deal of hope that things would change. But it has actually inflamed race relations in this country, and things have gotten worse and escalated. And that community has no trust, not just in the Baltimore Police Department, but in the administration as well.
Are you surprised that we see a world like we're seeing now under a black president 6 years in?
I think all of us are surprised because we haven't seen this since the 1960s. But if this action hadn't been taken by the Department of Justice, and if the complaint hadn't been filed against the police officers, this entire country would probably be on fire right now. That's how incendiary the situation is.
Jonathan?
Well, I mean, how long has this been going on? Obviously, there's been they keep saying that there's been these rumors or that there's been this abuse by police officers. If that was the case, why wasn't this, why didn't the DOJ come in a long time ago? So let's educate the public on what happens. The police department polices itself. They have their own internal investigations. And when the mayor believes that they are not policing themselves, then she could have called in the DOJ to come in and do an investigation on the police department. This isn't something that just happened with Freddie Gray, according to a lot of what a lot of people are saying. The other problem I'm having with this is that I can measure everybody at this table based on your experience, your education, and how you present yourself on a daily basis. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin. And I'm sick and tired of hearing newscasters and individuals on TV in Baltimore and all around the country saying, I'm a proud black man, I'm black, I'm black. Listen, you're a human being. You don't want to be defined by your color, stop defining yourself by your color, and the whole community will make a change if you stop doing that.
That's very well said, but I want to hear how you'd measure me.
And like George Carlin said, by the size of your nostrils.
Okay, very good. I thought you were going to say 5'9.5", which would have been accurate. Heather, I know you wanted to add something there.
Well, I think that your point is well said. You know, when you have African American officers on the defense, that are defendants in this type of case, you see that it's about more than color. You see it's about crime. You see it's about the type of
and the lack of standards. That's why what you said. If you want to cure this stuff, tell a cop, you do this, you do that. If a guy says his legs can't move, you stop everything, you get an ambulance there.
Well,
if you don't do that, you get fired.
And that's one thing that Lynch said. She said, we want to give the police tools so that they can better deal with these situations. And so maybe this is a good way to start over and have our country be a little better.
I know your answer on this is a one-word answer. Are you for or against body cams?
I am for them.
Okay.
For.
Four. There you go. I think that'll solve it.
Everybody has them anyway.
Well, it's a very good point, right? Got one right here. Coming up next, David Cameron will stay on as British Prime Minister. But what about the American political veteran strategist advising him? Back with more in a moment. And welcome back to The Wrap. In the United Kingdom, a stunning clean sweep for David Cameron's Conservative Party.
I've just been to see Her Majesty the Queen, and I will now form a majority Conservative government. Elections can be bruising clashes of ideas and arguments, and a lot of people who believe profoundly in public service have seen that service cut short. Ed Miliband rang me this morning to wish me luck with the new government. It was a typically generous gesture from someone who is clearly in public service for all the right reasons.
Meanwhile, British bookmakers have Piers Morgan playing the Prime Minister at even money. Boy, they look a lot alike. Anyway, the British Prime Minister winning his second term and will now have an outright majority in Parliament. With all the votes counted, Conservatives had 331 seats to Labour's 232, a preview of the 2016 election here, obviously. The outcome was most unexpected. The polls had indicated a dead heat. The leaders of the Independents, Liberal and Labour parties all resigned after their stinging defeats.
And yes, we will deliver that in-out referendum on our future in Europe. As we conduct this vital work, we must ensure that we bring our country together. As I said in the small hours of this morning, we will govern as a party of one nation, one United Kingdom.
I'm using that, the small hours of the morning. Yeah, instead of like,
it's a fortnight.
Yeah, it's a fortnight. I love the way they speak. Anyway, the British Prime Minister now saying that he will follow on his campaign promise to re-examine Britain's role in the EU.
He wants a fair deal with Britain, and that the Commission will examine in a very polite, friendly and objective way any proposals, ideas or requests that the UK may put forward.
Well, if you're wondering whatever happened to Michael Dukakis, we now have our answer. A spokesman for the EU looks forward to sitting down with Mr. Prime Minister Cameron.
Britain needs a Labour Party that can rebuild after this defeat so we can have a government that stands up for working people again. And now it's time for someone else to take forward the leadership of this party.
Cameron is also promising to move ahead with a plan to give more powers to Scotland, which my in-laws will like, which voted overwhelmingly for the pro-independent Scottish National Party. Here at home, the White House says President Obama is proud of the relationship he's forged with Cameron and looks forward to continued close ties after today's big win. All right, Heather, I don't know your nationality. Do you have any Scot in you? Any Brit?
No, Irish and Norwegian.
Oh, very good. It's an interesting combination.
It is.
So are your parents.
Yeah, I got a little Spanish Irish in there.
You're a
Black
mutt.
Irish, exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
So, your thoughts on the election?
Listen, I think that it's interesting that in both Britain and we saw in Israel earlier this year that the conservative parties won, and so I think that that shows a real change towards, real concerns in Britain, especially about immigration and the economy.
Can I stop you there for a second?
Yeah.
Conservative Party in Britain, just for the layman's at home, does that stand? Is that basically the same as the Conservative Party here?
Same
They're
thing
different.
I was wondering. Yeah.
It's similar. It's similar. They have similar outlooks, I would say. The Labour Party is more towards the Democratic, and sometimes they're the Labour Democratic Party. But, right, this election that we're talking about, that was based on the economy, and it was based on immigration, which is very interesting. England is trying to become even less open to immigrants, in large part because of the threat of ISIS and the different threats that we've seen.
Sure.
So I think that you see a real mandate there that may actually have some showing for when we have our elections. The other thing I just want to say real quickly is these polls. We're the era of big data and the pollsters, and they've got to be shaking their heads because both in Israel and in the UK, we saw pollsters who did not have a clue. And you wonder why that is, and the reliance on that type of data, whether that will continue here when we look at our elections.
The polling apparently was bad because even Nate Silver said that this was going to be a dead heat, and he's supposed to be our guru.
Right,
he
exactly.
screwed it up.
That makes you wonder about all these polls that we rely on so heavily when we're talking about these issues.
And Jonathan loves polls.
Yeah, listen, they take, like yesterday we were talking about where they took 750 out of 10 million people. I mean, first off, 750, you better go all over the place to pick each one of those people, because if you go to the Upper East Side and you pick 750 people in the rich area up on Park Avenue, you're going to get 750 people that pretty much feel the same exact way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So those polls can be skewed. But I have to say, every time I hear a British politician, I just can't stop thinking about Game of Thrones now, and it just doesn't work for me.
Right.
I'm waiting for somebody to die.
Yeah, Joffrey gets poisoned, and then
Yes.
that's a
I
good
just
point,
want to
Susan.
say my first husband ran for public office statewide. We got on the phones one night and started calling people and doing a poll. We called about 150 people, our closest friends and family, sent out a press release, the media covered it. There you go.
That was your poll?
That was our poll, yes indeed.
Wow. Well, personally, my wife and I were rooting for Mr. Cameron. I think he's an outstanding leader.
Yeah.
But also because we actually named our daughter after the Prime Minister. That's how impressed we are of her. Do we have any evidence of said daughter to share with our Newsmax audience?
Oh,
Yes.
look at that.
There she is. See how I worked that in? So
Beautiful.
Is this her first TV appearance?
this is her first TV appearance, actually. And she looks absolutely nothing like me. She looks like my wife and my wife's personal trainer. I can't put my finger on it. Anyway, talking Hillary Clinton, that's next. Stay right here. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Well, former Secretary of State and 2016 Democratic hopeful Hillary Clinton has faced a lot of bad press since announcing her run for president. And now it's taking a toll on her poll numbers. As we mentioned last night, Mrs. Clinton running behind Republican governors Jeb Bush and Scott Walker in a head-to-head hypothetical matchup in the blue state of New Hampshire. We say hypothetical because somehow Bush and Walker have not announced yet. They're probably just waiting their turn. Iowa voters, however, do not seem fazed by the scandals. A new Quinnipiac poll asked Iowan Democrats who they would support if the Democratic caucus were held today, and voters, not surprisingly, overwhelmingly support Hillary Clinton with just 60% of the vote. And check out the political juggernaut she may or may not be facing. First up, she actually overcame Bernie Sanders, who is second at 15%. Then there's Uncle Joe Biden at 11. Then you have Martin O'Malley at 3. You got Webb at 3. That is quite a bench the Democrats have going right now. It is shocking that Hillary got only 60 when that's your competition. So anyway, the poll also asked Iowa Democrats if they think Mrs. Clinton is trustworthy or not. Well, these are Democrats answering, remember, so, boy, that really goes along party lines. 3 and 4 saying, of course! You can trust her completely. 17% say no. I'd love to know what the other 5% were thinking in that poll. So, she is trustworthy. Yes, that's true. Now, the actual Iowa caucus will not take place until next February, and things may change by then. But can Mrs. Clinton breathe a sigh of relief with these new poll numbers? Remember, she lost the Iowa caucus back in 2008 to the guy we now call president.
I think she's not worried until there's someone who's actually a rival. You know, you'd look at those polls and there's nobody out there.
Is there anybody out there? Give me like a business person, somebody.
I mean, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of people who would like to see Elizabeth Warren. I think that if Elizabeth Warren ran, she's really principled, you know, and she would really be running on her principles. And there's a lot of people who have strong support for her. So that might give her a run.
The problem is that Elizabeth Warren is way too far to the right of Hillary Clinton right now. In other words, Hillary's gone so far left.
Right. Yeah. No,
You ever see Spaceballs? And they're driving the spaceship and they go from ridiculous speed to ludicrous speed and they go by everybody. That's what she did with the amnesty announcement that she just had. She went to the left of Elizabeth Warren.
But the problem that Hillary would have if she ran against somebody like Elizabeth Warren is she doesn't walk or talk, whereas Elizabeth Warren does. Yeah. She doesn't have all of the conflicts and things that she said before, things that she's done before, and it would really point out the discrepancies for Hillary.
Jonathan, you love politics, and I know you love the horse races.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm so sick of our two-party system. I just think it's completely broken. It's full of corruption, and I think I said the other day that Hillary Clinton has now broken the glass ceiling. She is the most powerful female criminal in the world. I mean, and she gets away with everything. She does it right in front of everybody. I know tons of special agents and people that work at the State Department would be in jail for what she did with the servers alone. But come on, the United States has got to start looking for people that are real leaders and put them up there. This is a joke now.
Do you think it's a celebrity thing at this point? Because
that's all
she's a brand name and Bush is a brand name.
It's like that one place where the guy who was dead got reelected. You know, I mean, it's like it's just people just
that was
liberals.
My state, by the way, Missouri.
Whoa! Share that story.
Yeah, actually, we had our Missouri State governor running for Senate, and he was killed in a plane accident before the election. So they kept him on the ballot, and he won the election. So then they had to appoint his wife to serve out his term as Senate, or I guess she served two years.
You know what that does? That's an advocacy for less government, because if you're not alive, you can't govern.
Well, that's
true.
And things must be getting better for sure. But I think to your point, Jonathan, that we need leaders. Leaders don't want to get involved in politics anymore because it's all tainted. It's a slimy business. Right. Who wants to get there? And as far as Hillary, I think the Democrats just want to anoint her queen or king or whatever because she waited her turn. It is now her turn. And the other big concern I have is no matter what she does, she's like the Teflon woman. Nothing sticks to her. And yet there are still women, and Heather, maybe you see this, who say you have to vote for her because she's a woman. Yeah, sure. I am sorry. I'm going to vote for the person who is best for the job, not their gender, their race, or anything else.
We're just past that.
Yeah.
We're past that now. You know, I mean, look, you all can beat me in certain things, and I can beat you in certain things. That's just
Connect Four before we get on the show. I beat you.
Yeah. But that's just the way it is. We all have our talents and expertise. We need to start looking for people who can lead. It doesn't matter, again. There is no such thing as black and white, as female or male when it comes to what we need right now. We need somebody who can come up with a strategic war plan, who can fix the economy, and who can just get rid of this useless game that these politicians do of making up crises so they can solve them.
And term limits, too.
I agree with you in the sense where I think a third-party candidate would actually do very well because there's so much discussed for both parties.
Right.
But can you give me a name? Is there anybody that stands out to you? And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
We can talk about it next week.
I can't. I mean, because I think that person's out there, but I don't know.
Okay. And I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I know you're saying no. We have the outline.
Yeah.
Right. We'll fill in the blanks. Jim Messina, by the way, is jumping to the Hillary camp. We should mention that. Anyway, potluck time next. Heather and I go. Favorite stories of the day. Back in a moment. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. It's potluck time. This is part of the show. We go around the table and we share our favorite stories of the day. Beauty before age, therefore Hanson.
It's my
you
turn.
up.
So every once in a while you have a run of these stories where people are filing lawsuits for all kinds of interesting reasons. So today there was a case where a woman named Angela Hawkins, 53 years old, was on a phone call with people at Verizon. And she had an unpleasant experience with them. Apparently, the supervisor got on the phone and accused her of threatening the person she had been speaking to. And the next day, she went to the hospital and she had a heart attack. So she had to have a stent placed, spent 4 days in the hospital. And now she is suing Verizon for emotional distress because she had to go to the hospital and she had a heart attack. And as a lawyer, you see this type of case and it is just impossible to actually support in court. How are you going to trace the heart attack back to this one event in time?
Aren't all phone calls recorded for quality purposes?
But Joe, even if you can listen to the call and say, oh sure, that was very distressing, how can you prove that it wasn't the fact that she smoked, ate bacon, and all of these other things that actually caused her heart attack as
Something
opposed
triggered
to this
it.
one
Trust
phone
me, I'm
call.
playing devil's
And
advocate,
listen,
and I don't want to.
It is, but whenever lawyers, when people hate lawyers, lawyer jokes, then you're always like, well, what's the big deal? When people take these types of cases, the other one that we saw just recently, I think it was this week, and it's actually on trial right now, is a cop who bought Starbucks coffee, put it in his lap, went to drive away, the lid popped off, and he got burns. Similar to what we saw in the 90s where that lady, right. But
Did she win, that girl, McDonald's? Like
yeah,
$1 million?
she won like $3 million.
Wow, it's a lot of Big
interesting
Macs.
because whenever we're picking juries in cases, that's one of the questions that always comes up for the jury. Did you hear about that case? Do you think it was too much? Do you think it was not enough, to get a sense of whether or not the jury's leaning one way?
But I think in that case, that water was scalding hot.
It was scalding hot. They didn't have warnings. They had seen it before. It was a very different situation. Here, the thing that frustrates me is the guy went home, took pictures of the burns, changed his clothes, and then went to the hospital. So that case is actually on trial. We'll see what happens with it. But when you see these cases over and over again and you wonder what's wrong with the system and where all of our resources are going, the fact that judges and jurors are having to take time out of their jobs to sit for a week and listen to testimony in these types of cases, it's a little
This wouldn't have
bit
worked 10 years
upsetting.
ago because he would have had to go to Walmart and get those developed. And it would have, by that
It would have
time,
been all kinds of time.
the time
yeah.
would have been over. It would
You know, I tell people because who are starting businesses and they say, oh, I don't need to incorporate my business or whatever. One of the things I always say is, look, anybody can sue you for anything at any time.
It's true.
You know, you have to protect your personal assets, and it's a shame that it's gotten to that point.
We were talking about the UK before and Britain. I love their rule.
Yes.
And that is if you sue somebody
Yeah,
and
you
you lose, you pay their legal bill.
And you know what? I have so many clients who are from other countries who say, "Why can't it be that way?"
Why
and it's
can't it be that
fair.
way?
It is. That is fair. That is
Yes.
fair. If you're going to go to that type of time, money, expense, you shouldn't have to pay
The
for it.
money
once
grubbing
you lose.
lawyers in this country
That's true.
Well, that's what
will
I'm
not allow it to
Yeah.
happen,
Not us
except for you.
defense attorneys. That's right.
Except for you. Yes. Anyway, let's go from legal to Twitter. Again, second night in a row, we feature a CNN personality. And I've appeared on CNN, I don't know, a couple hundred times. Heather has. Jonathan was on there today. I mean, look, it's a nice place. They got a nice studio. Their green rooms are exceptional. But Sally Cohn, who is a very nice girl, by the way, and this is nothing personal, believe me, but this goes into the what the heck were you thinking Hall of Fame that Chris Cuomo currently occupies for his tweet yesterday. So let's put up the tweet of Miss Cohen. She was going to the subway and she writes, "Forgot my wallet, MTA officer let me on the subway for free. Hashtag class privilege, hashtag white privilege." Wait a minute. I have worked in New York City for 20 years. I'm going to age myself. And oftentimes I take the subway. And I have seen almost, not on a daily basis, but regularly, people saying, my Metro card, it's the card you use to swipe or go through, it's bent, it's not working. And they'll go up to an officer, or they don't have their wallet, and they'll say, can you let me through? And they open up the handicap door, and 99 times out of 100, an officer will let you through. And that officer, by the way, isn't, you know, a white guy. It could be black, Latino, Asian, New York, it's everywhere. So for Miss Cohn to say this, guys, to say that because she's white, that she went through that subway turnstile for free is utterly ridiculous. And oh, by the way, if you're so guilty about your white privilege, then maybe you should have thought about it again and said, maybe I shouldn't accept it because I don't want to be seen as not equal to everybody else. Jonathan, your thoughts?
I have no thoughts on this. It's like it's complete. It's like reading People magazine. It's destroyed my brain. That tweet, it has to be one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. I've met her too.
Yeah.
Extremely nice person. stay off Twitter if you're not going to say if you don't have an educated argument. Just stay off Twitter.
Well, you can imagine what the responses were. Well, let's put those up there real quick. A person can't even be kind anymore without being accused of bigotry. That's from Milkshakes Anytime. Or it was just someone being kind who isn't racist and understands people sometimes forget their wallets. I think we have one more. Yes. Maybe she should pay it forward. That is such a guilt. But sadly, no, don't think that will happen. So she got killed on Twitter for it. And again, this just tells you, if you're on TV, put the Twitter down and think first before you write things like this, because you're representing an entire network. Anyway, yay or nay is next. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. Ooh, it's Friday happy hour time when you hear that music. Yes, welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's time for yay or nay. First up, a California man attempts to cash his winning lottery ticket for $75,000, only to be given $75 by the attendant. If that wasn't bad enough, the winner turned out to be, I hope you're sitting down, a state lottery inspector. The manager of the convenience store claims the clerk made an innocent mistake. An investigation is set to take place in 2 weeks. Heather will be representing said lottery inspector. Have you ever won anything is the first yay or nay question. Heather Hansen.
I have. I've won spelling bees. I've never won anything like a lottery type of deal. I've never been lucky that way.
Interesting. Jonathan.
I won $5, I think, on a lottery once, but I've won stuff that I had to train for.
Okay, that works.
Actually,
You earned it.
right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Susan?
I was third runner-up to Miss America.
Oh,
Were you really?
Yes.
1990.
So was I.
My boyfriend's mother said, "Oh, you lost."
It's all in how you look at it.
That's
just like
right.
anything
Everything's
in life.
relative, right?
It's like my grandpappy
Can you do
used
the
to
wave?
say,
Can you do the wave for us?
when you're second, you're first on the list of losers. Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Right.
third, good for you. What state did you represent?
Missouri.
Missouri, right.
Yes.
You mentioned
I
it before.
knew
Is it
that.
Missouri or Missouri?
I think it's Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know a lot of Missourians who say Missouri, so it depends.
My quick story around winning something is I won Yankee tickets on WPLJ here in New York. And it turned out I couldn't use them. I had to do a meeting like here in this city, but I could get up to the stadium to sell them. Now, I'm like 23, so I'm like, that could be pretty good money.
Right.
And I sold them, and it was an undercover cop.
Oh, no!
Yeah, yeah,
Ah, part of your record.
yeah. Is businessman and Kentucky gubernatorial candidate Hal Heiner the Christian Laettner of Kentucky politics? Agricultural commissioner and rival for governor James Comer thinks so. For those of you who don't know, calling someone Christian Laettner is the biggest insult you can throw at pretty much anyone in the state of Kentucky, and Maryland as well. And here's why.
A quick pass to half court and call a quick timeout so they can get in better shooting range.
There's the pass to Laettner. Puts it up. Yes!
Yep, I remember that moment. That was in 1992, 104-103. Duke, that was to go to the Final Four. They beat the University of Kentucky. The Wildcats recovered. They've won some national championships since, but boy, they remember that one. So when the story broke that Comer mentally and physically abused his girlfriend, Comer decided that everything was on the table, so he called him the Christian Laettner of Kentucky politics. Is evoking a college player who graduated 20 years ago from another school in another state the way to get to the governor's office, Ms. Sullivan?
No way. That's below the belt. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Not fair.
Jonathan?
I'm rocked seeing that again. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Listen, politicians will use whatever they can.
I don't think most of the constituents know what the heck he was talking about.
You're probably right. And in the NCAA polls this year, my team name was actually I Hate Christian Laettner. So maybe it is effective. In science news, promiscuous women cause earthquakes. This according to an Iranian prayer leader in Tehran who believes earthquakes, we have the footage, are the direct result of women who dress provocatively and tempt people into promiscuity. How dare they talk about Heather that way? Prayer leader guy, you'll have to answer to me. So, forget about severe stress releasing energy causing massive vibrations called seismic waves, yes. Now we know the real reason behind at least one natural disaster. Is this taking slut-shaming a bit too far, Heather Hansen?
Absolutely, but we know, what was it last week, that they say that it's okay to cannibalize your wife, so this just goes along with the way that they look at things.
Jonathan?
I just can't believe that the woman was showing her eyebrows.
That's a good point.
There you go.
Big no-no.
Hey, in this country, women used to be chat chattel. They were property. So, you know, I can. But
That's an earthquake?
I think the guy just needs to have sex, quite frankly.
Clearly, right?
Yes.
That would help, right?
Yeah, I think so. It improves his
Feel the earth
attitude.
move?
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So you were third. Wow. I really didn't know. And the Miss America. That's awesome. Hey, finally, the heavyweights over at McDonald's, pun intended, heavyweights, are bringing back the Hamburglar. But he's not the same guy you remember from your childhood. The beefed up Hamburglar is, first of all, an actual man now, and many are saying he's super attractive. The new and improved Hamburglar will appear on television spots promoting the chain's new sirloin third-pound burger. New Hamburglar, yay or nay? I say nay. J.D. Hayworth is next, Newsmax Prime.